Hello and welcome back to our podcast, People Acting Like Lawyers and Mostly Malarkey, here on Listen Frederick. I'm your co-host, Meg, and with me is my co-host, Devin.
Hello, everybody.
Devin's an immigration attorney, and today our guest speaker is Detric Kemp, a civil litigator.
Hi.
Now, Devin, Detric, and I are all Maryland lawyers. This podcast episode in no way constitutes legal advice, which can only be obtained by a licensed attorney in the context of a private and confidential legal consultation. We disclaim any and all liability for what our listeners may or may not do in their own lives based upon our dialogue on this podcast, which is strictly for entertainment purposes only.
And I want to remind everybody, please drink responsibly.
Today's episode is Common Misconceptions About the Legal System. And our subtopics may include the law and procedure, the average cost of going to court to litigate, the degree of justice possible in court, the appropriate scope of attorney advocacy on behalf of clients, and the distinction between a life problem and a legal problem with a legal remedy. So to kick off our episode today, we're starting with a toast of Rumple Minze Spirits. So this is peppermint schnapps and Rumple Minze. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
To Devin. It is his birthday week this week.
Thank you. Yes.
Happy birthday.
3-8.
That's one of my favorite shots. Before I jump in, I will
Nice.
preface this topic by saying that Devin and I, while we have litigated in court on behalf of clients, representing clients in court as attorneys, we have also been parties in cases. So we've also each had to file a claim in circuit court to protect our rights. Thank you, Detric, for joining us. Detric, you handle a lot of divorce and custody cases. What would you say is the most common misconception people have in family law matters?
I would say that the most common misconception would be that if the judge hears what I have to tell them, if the judge hears that my spouse committed adultery, if the judge hears how bad my life has been because of my spouse, then I'm going to get everything and they will get nothing. But the reality of the situation is judges understand that marriages break down because there has been a problem and many people get divorced. And so it doesn't necessarily work like that. And what people often don't realize is that everything in the court system is filtered through the rules of evidence. So there may be a lot that a party wants to tell a judge, a person may want to tell a judge, but you can't say it because everything is filtered through the rules of evidence. And if you don't have personal knowledge, if you can't talk about it from personal knowledge, then you can't even testify about it. So I think the most common misconception is that if the judge hears how bad my spouse treated me, then they're going to throw the book at my spouse. My spouse or former spouse will be homeless and I will get everything.
Well, and along those lines, when it comes to some things you may not want to put out there, right? Because when you start slinging mud, then what happens? I mean, do you really want to go there a lot of times?
Absolutely. I mean, family law cases are just that, right? Especially cases involving children, because what you do is you are saying the worst about the other parent in order to try to get more custodial time, more parenting time with your children. And what often happens is you are destroying what good relationship you may have had before with the mother, father of the other parent of your children. I think Emily Dickinson said something in high school that resonated with me, or said something in high school, and it was a word is dead when it is said, some say. I say it begins to live that day. And so the awful things that parents are saying about each other in the courthouse, those words are not forgotten.
Yeah.
And that becomes part of a transcript. That is part of a record. So you have to realize that what you're saying about the other parent is going to live forever. And maybe someday your children may even hear what you said about their parent.
When I did divorce and custody, like I usually had a co-counsel, and what my co-counsel would say is that, well, everybody thinks they're a great parent, right? So it's like you get in this mindset of, oh, I'm doing all these things right, but then you're focusing on what the other person is doing wrong instead of focusing on what they are actually doing right and finding common ground with them, because you're gonna have to co-parent with them forever. You're gonna be at like high school graduations together, the child's hopefully wedding. I mean, yeah,
Absolutely. It's a team, right? You're working together.
it's
but you're in the
supposed to
same
be.
home.
because it's all about the best interest of the child.
That is it.
Right. And which there's a lot of factors to that. I mean, that probably takes you a good amount of time to counsel each client about what that means and all those factors,
Oh.
because it's not straightforward in Maryland.
Absolutely. And there are studies like ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, right? It tells us that it's better for children to have a relationship with both parents.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that not having that relationship is an adverse childhood experience that later impacts their brain, that impacts brain development. So judges have to try to figure out what to do for your children when parents are the experts on their children.
Right.
And it's better when they can come together and decide what's best for their children, instead of having some judge, some stranger, who's going to hear a little bit about your life, filter through the rules of evidence, make a decision about what is best for your children, not taking into account your beliefs, your culture, different things. The judge is going to make the decision, and that's the decision that is going to stay until or unless the two parties reach some other type of agreement, or unless you go back to court and a different decision is rendered.
And my understanding is that not all the judges in this area like to get into the holiday schedule. So if nothing else, at least work that out in advance of trial, because you might end up with something that neither party wants.
Absolutely.
Just briefly, on both of you all have experience in family law. I had one consultant said, I'm never doing family law. Yeah, I can't stand it. But when people separate, when people come to you and it's a divorce, it's the ugliest situation ever. I feel that it's people think they're getting married because they're just for the love and not for the partnership. That's my opinion. When marriages go very badly, at the beginning, it's not understood that this is not just about we love each other.
Yeah.
This is a partnership to build something. And I think if that's understood, even if there is a divorce, it works out in the end. That's my opinion. Do you all have an opinion on that?
Well, like John Gottman writes about that, right? Like the 4 pillars of a relationship. And then when some of that breaks down, like the trust or the friendship, the rest of it breaks down. But go ahead, Detric.
Absolutely. No, I know this is a cliche, but there is a thin line between love and hate. People that really love each other and think that they're going to be together for the rest of their lives sometimes are blindsided when a divorce happens. And maybe it's their own fault. Maybe they're not seeing the signs. Maybe they don't realize that their partner has grown, has gotten more mature, and they're just missing all the signs. But when you have a situation where these people love each other so much and the marriage breaks down for whatever reason, sometimes it turns to anger, turns to vengeance. And what you want to do is you want that person to suffer. You want that person to hurt like you're hurting. You want them to feel some of your pain. And what you do is you act out, and because you've probably confided in each other, you know each other's darkest secrets. So now you're going to weaponize that and use that to hurt.
I don't understand how it gets to that.
But really, in any civil case, you don't want to be acrimonious, right? Because it's going to ratchet it up no matter. I mean, we're talking about divorce and custody law, but it is true in any civil case that the more acrimony, the more expensive it's going to be, the more stressful it's going to be. And it's like, shouldn't look at it as a zero-sum game is my perspective.
Absolutely.
That the more that I win and they lose, that's an ultimate outcome. Well, how about we talk about why people want what they want and see if we can expand the negotiating pizza pie right before we start slicing it up and like worrying about how much you got versus how much I got.
It's the number one, not number one, but I would say, I don't have the fact checker now, top 3 transfers of wealth and losses of wealth is divorce. It's why you were poor, you got up there, and then you fell right back down. You got poor again. And I think there should be caps on family law attorneys, and Maryland should make a law to impose flat rates and do good by its citizens.
Well, it's devastating to people, emotionally and financially. It very much can be. So, Devin, what do you believe is the most significant misconception among Americans about our legal system?
That the law is exactly what it says it is. That a rule is exactly what it says it is. Oh, the Fourth Amendment protects against unlawful search and seizure. Okay, what is unlawful search and seizure, right? There's different scenarios apply. People think it's across the board. Well, okay, listen, my Fourth Amendment, I'm in my vehicle. You can't open the door. You can't search my home. There's specific scenarios. So I think that, and it doesn't help that some court opinions don't sound like the law at all, and they sort of drive the way that a decision would be made. So I think that's what there's people, the biggest misconception about the legal system is that it, a law or a statute is exactly what it says. And I've been as frustrated as they have when I read a statute and then I'm in court and it doesn't work out the way the way the statute reads. It is frustrating.
Yeah, and I think when Detric and I were speaking before the episode, he was saying that can be an issue, and it's like, do you file the appeal and pay all the money, or like in the example of if your client's found in contempt and it's 10 times cheaper to just purge the contempt, right? You're advising them to do that. So Detric, how does one know whether their attorney is being too aggressive or too passive in a civil case? From the client perspective, what would be your philosophy on that?
It aligns with what a person is looking for as an attorney. One of the key things that for an attorney-client relationship is communication. And important to tell people what the expectation is, what the standard is up front. What I like to say to a lot of my cases, because sometimes there are a lot of emails.
Yeah.
And the emails, people are being snarky. People are saying a lot of different things. They're saying you don't have a case, right? I don't really get into the back and forth with other attorneys via email because that doesn't do anything but increase the cost of litigation. The person that's going to be making the decision is the judge. And these emails are just not doing anything but increasing the cost of litigation.
That's true.
So doing that. But you want to make sure that your attorney is adhering to the deadlines, that your attorney is showing up to court and advocating on your behalf, whatever that may mean. Some people believe that if my attorney did not object to something, that something is wrong. And there is a reason why your attorney may or may not have objected to certain questions, right? We go to law school in order to learn how to think like a lawyer. And so I think when people get into the situation of saying, oh, my attorney wasn't aggressive enough, or my attorney was too aggressive, you may not understand the underlying strategy behind anything that the attorney does in the courtroom, because most of the time it is strategic, right? You say objection for strategic. Sometimes it's about preserving the record for appeal. So I think that it's important for anyone who is seeking an attorney for any matter to make sure that they have a conversation with that attorney so they understand that attorney's litigation style. I think one of the most insincere things an attorney can do is to try to mimic someone else, right? If I don't try a case like Devin tries a case, then I can't be Devin in the courtroom, right? I can only be Detric, and I can use my skills, my talents in order to litigate a case. Devin and I have tried a number of cases together.
Yeah.
And we've been successful in those cases. And our litigation styles are different. Even questioning.
I can tell you, there are attorneys, criminal, when I was doing mainly criminal, public defender's office, even a few years private, there were attorneys that they can just whip, like you just did it earlier, whip sayings out. They'll begin talking to the jury and they'll say, I can't even think of one as an example. I don't know sayings at all. For a while, I really wanted to do things that way. But yeah, you're right. It's not me. So I just have my own style, which is a sort of direct and more passionate, I guess, vocally in areas that I think should be taken seriously by the judge.
And it works well for you and your clients because you are being authentic. You're being you.
Correct.
But if you're before the judge and the judge is like clearly putting your attorney in check, then you might know that your attorney's being a little overzealous, right?
It depends on the client, right? If they want to fight, and they might love it. It depends on the situation,
yeah.
And sometimes they want to love it. They love it no matter what. But that's not the right. It's not the right time to be. Having the judge chastise you.
And sometimes it's about putting things on the record. I know I've been in court where judges have said things to me that they wish they probably didn't say to me. And sometimes I've taken those cases on appeal, and the appellate court agreed that something happened that shouldn't have happened, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, and I think Meg, you said this earlier, we're all human.
Yeah.
So people are going to make mistakes. Judges say they make mistakes. That's what appellate courts are for, right? So there's always someone to, I shouldn't say always, but most of the times there's some way to sort of right this wrong. Because judges are going to make some good decisions. Judges are going to make some bad decisions because they're human, right? They're capable of making mistakes.
You try listening to somebody talk for 2 hours. I mean, I can't last 10 minutes, right? So, I have to, take a break and come back in. Judges will sit there. They're rather patient and attentive. They'll sit there and listen for an hour or 2 hours straight. They're not going to retain all of that.
But there's the law and there's procedure. And so sometimes when things go on appeal, it could be either way. Like the ball is bouncing and the case could turn on the law or procedure or a combination of both. And so I think that maybe consumers or clients, they might think of, well, the law says this, so that's this the way it should be, right? But there's a procedure involved as well. And sometimes judges get it wrong at the lower court level and you have to go on appeal, but how many Americans can afford appeal?
That's the question. Absolutely. They
Like-
are very, very expensive.
Like what is the price range of litigating like at trial? Like just I'm not going to hold you to these numbers, but I mean, you have criminal cases and you have civil cases, but in civil cases, like you're looking at how much or more for a trial.
They're both expensive. What, 20,000?
Depends on how
10
many
to
days
20.
of trial, obviously, but
Absolutely.
Criminal appeal, 10 to 20,000, I would imagine. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
If it's a serious, we're talking about a felony or murder and a first degree assault, it's very expensive to appeal.
Absolutely.
what would you say is the range in family law for like a trial versus like a trial plus an appeal?
A trial could range anywhere from, usually, if we're talking about divorce and custody, that trial could be anywhere from $30,000 to maybe $60,000,
Mm-hmm.
and that is being conservative on that.
Yeah,
If
I would say.
if it's on appeal, then that means those people are paying probably an additional $25,000 on appeal. And what happens if you win on appeal? What usually happens is the appellate court reverses what the trial court did, and they provide specific instructions and send it
Yeah.
right back to the same court
Yeah.
that did not get it correct the first time, to have them do it again. So you have a brand new trial. So if you spent $60,000 the first time, chances are the second time you may spend around that same amount. So you're looking at over $100,000 to try a case. And when you think about what you can do with that amount of money,
Oh yeah.
most people can buy, in some places you can buy a home for that.
Yeah, man.
Amount.
Don't raise taxes. Cap family law attorney fees. It's
The-
ridiculous.
The saying is, do you want to put your kids through college or mine, as the attorney? Okay, so the subtopics that we perhaps haven't touched on yet are the difference between a life problem, right, and a legal problem with a legal remedy, and the degree of justice possible in court. Now, Devin, I did want to ask with regard to immigration law, what misconceptions do clients often have about the legal process in immigration cases?
A lot of people have no idea how difficult it is to just to get legal. That's really the biggest thing. It's they're very limited. To be honest, there's limited circumstances where one can be in this country, and let's say one doesn't have status in the
Yeah.
country at the moment. Limited areas where they can actually get that green card, like folks on the news talk about. Like, why don't they just get status? It is not that easy, and in many times it's impossible. And that's the biggest misconception about immigration law is that it's not until they go through the process. An example is, I'm a citizen. I was born here, so I'm not aware of was not aware of how
Yeah.
difficult the system was. So for U.S. citizens, people born here, growing up here, we're not even thinking about I have to get status. So you have to, number one, get to that level of understanding. And then when you understand how difficult the process is, you think the MVA is bad. Immigration is times 10 the MVA. Okay, imagine waiting on your driver's license for like 3 years. So, and imagine people wait for status for years and years and years, and sometimes you need status to even get a driver's license. So it sort of has a cascading effect. And because in life things are very simple, like going to get your driver's license or getting health insurance But when somebody doesn't have status, those small little things involve, well, first you have to file your immigration application. You have to wait a year and a half, have it get approved. Then you go to the MVA and get your driver's license. There's just there's so many steps in between people are not aware of.
And with regard to justice, justice is a relative term, right? So that term might mean something different to each of us. And so for some immigration clients, did they just want to give up?
You know, I think a lot of folks say, some folks will say that, yeah, just tell it to me straight. What shot do I have? And once again, like family law, immigration is rather expensive. It only gets more expensive the more difficult this country treats immigration. So it's only going to get more expensive the more that the more it becomes more difficult to practice. So, you know, we're talking about the average cost of an immigration case at our firm could be anywhere. It could be from $7,000 to $30,000. So it's a lot of money. And some people, they want to spend all that and they say, you know, I want to fight. I want to fight. I want to fight. But I think deep down, there's that chance that you might be able to stay. And I think that's really what it's about. So I think when people say, I just want justice, I want my day in court, I think people really are telling me that, listen, I want to exhaust every opportunity because you never know what can happen. So I think that's what justice means, you know, in the immigration arena. You know, for a lot of people that say, I just want justice. You know, they just want a shot. They want that anything can happen moment.
Yeah. So, you know, with regard to civil litigation, I would say, you know, for each person or potential client that goes to hire an attorney, you should have a concept of what justice means to you. Like define it for yourself and decide how you can go about achieving that. Maybe you have to do it through hiring an attorney and go through the process, the lawful steps, right, in the immigration process. But maybe, you know, in the civil litigation context, that looks a lot different.
It's interesting you brought up justice because, you know, it just clicked to me. Justice definitely applies to different arenas of law. I always think of justice in the criminal arena, where to me, it's just it's a fancy word for revenge. You know, that's all I hear when I hear justice. Compensation. What is that? You know, I want money. I want justice. It's a code word to me. Justice is funny to me. It's code. It's like, oh, I don't want to be a bad person, so I'm going to say justice, right? You know, oh, you want revenge. So hearing it in the immigration context, I want that green card. I want to stay. It really is a colored word. It is, and I kind of get quite irritated at it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think both of you are right. Because it depends on how you define what justice means to you. I know I've had situations where someone may owe someone $1,000, and they want to bring a breach of contract action for this $1,000. And so one of the things that I often say is that, especially in cases where someone says, "I'll pay you $100 a month," right? You should take it, because if you hire an attorney and the attorney has problems getting that, you could spend $5,000, $10,000 in legal fees to try to recoup $1,000. And even if your contract says that attorney's fees are recoverable, chances are, if you spend $10,000 in attorney's fees to get $1,000, you are not going to get attorney's fees. If you do, they're going to be like half. You may get $500 if you're lucky. So I think just trying to figure out what you want, what does justice mean to you? Because if you don't care, if you would rather spend $11,000 to get $1,000, and that is your justice because you are able to get a judgment against someone that may or may not have the ability to pay, then that's your justice. But if your justice is that you want to make sure that that this wrong is righted somehow, right? Then half of the time, most of those things happen outside of the courtroom. I think a lot of people believe that, the courtroom can address every problem that I have. I can just take them to court. But the reality of the situation is that very seldomly occurs. The court has limited remedies. And so most of the time, people think that legal and justice is the way to go. But oftentimes, it is just reaching out to the other person and trying to work something out that works for the both of you.
Justice to me is just the legal way of saying I want to legally be able to make myself feel better about the situation. That's all it is. Whether if your son was murdered, but you're a Christian, you're a Catholic, it's in the commandments, thou shalt not kill, but you want justice and you want that death penalty. what are you saying? And what I think as society is saying, it's okay to feel that way. We're not going to spend too much time debating that whether you should or not. You can feel that way. You can have this, you can have that. I really think that's what justice is.
Absolutely.
And somebody really should look inside themselves and say, what does justice, like you said, what does justice mean to me? I think you'll find a lot of things you don't like about yourself if you're really thinking about what justice is. Because I think it's like, what do I want? That's really what I think about it.
Yeah, I think the word fair is just construed too many different ways
Subjective
by
fairness,
too many
yeah.
different people. But if you look at the word equitable, that does give you a little bit of a better basis, right? And there's the doctrine of equity, like equity regards as done that which ought to have been done. So if you have I always tell my students, right, because I teach at the local colleges, if you have no other argument, you can't remember the law, and at least you can make an equitable argument. That this is what happened, but this is the way it should have happened because of the contract or whatever, the law, the history of the parties in dealing with each other. And so, Judge, can you put me in the position that I would have been in if the other party, carried out their responsibilities pursuant to the contract or pursuant to our established course of dealing with each other. And I will say, as far as, trying to get justice in court, as Detric was saying, judges, they take the evidence before them and they rule based on the evidence and the law, but they can only rule based on the claims that were put forth, right? So if your pleadings don't have all the possible causes of action tied to all the potential remedies, right, they would make that person feel like at least an ounce of justice was served, right? So when we talked about things to look at when deciding what lawyer to hire, make sure you hire a lawyer that not only specializes in the area of the case law, the case that you have, but then also has a fair amount of years experience in that area of law. Because if it's not asking isn't getting, right? But if you don't ask for it, you won't get it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So Detric, on that note of the distinction between a life problem and a legal problem with a legal remedy, how would you say we counsel clients who come to us with a problem that isn't a legal problem with a legal remedy? How do we tactfully communicate to them that I hear you and I understand and you make some good points. However,
I think just being open and honest with people. I know when someone comes to me for a consultation, I give them what I would want in an attorney. I would want someone to tell me the honest truth. If what I'm asking for is something that is not likely to happen, I would like for you to tell me that. But I would also like for you to tell me if there is a shot that there is a small chance. And if you want to hire me to do this, I don't know how successful we'll be, but I will do my best to give you your day in court, because I think that's what it's all about. Because some people, if they have a 20% chance of winning, and whatever their idea of winning is, like whatever that means to them, it may be worth it. So I think it's up to individuals to sort of make that decision about what this case is worth to you. I know that oftentimes people hear that most cases settle. A lot of cases settle. And I think that happens, and I think there's a good reason for it doing that. But when cases don't settle, I think that a good attorney is going to tell you that, listen, this settlement, if we go to court and this settlement happens, this is what the judge orders, this is good for you. I would consider this a victory. People need to know that before they spend another $15,000 to $20,000 on having you prepare and do a lot of things and get something either akin to what was offered at settlement or less than what was offered at settlement. So I think just being able to have that conversation with people, because what I learned is that they may not be happy when you deliver that information to them.
Yeah.
But once they go around and they talk to others, they usually come back to you and say, you gave me good advice.
Yep.
So I would like to use you.
Yep.
Because that's what people want. Litigants don't need attorneys to tell them what they want to hear.
Well, some want that, and some attorneys do that to an extent.
And when you're starting out, you got to do that more often than not, right?
But I think as attorneys, it's our job to tell people what they need to hear, right?
Yeah.
If they don't have a case, we should be able to tell them that. or if they're looking for, I remember I had a client come to me and they thought they knew their legal issue. They thought they knew it and they explained to me what the legal problem was. And I
Yeah.
looked at everything and I was like, well, that's not really your problem.
Yeah.
And so when I explained to the client what their problem was, I was able to get things rectified for less than $500 because it did not take a lot of my time. But if I did exactly what the person wanted me to do, they would have spent at least 10,000 in litigation,
Mm.
and they would have ended up having to pay out more money to the other side. So it's like listening to the person, listening to your client, and helping them understand what they're looking for because they don't know the law. It's our job to know the law.
And with technology, it's a whole different type of ball game in consults now with me. It is funny. So you'll see somebody's phone on the table. I gotta be like, "Yeah, if you're recording, I give you permission." Like the walk-in recording, trying to be secretive. I'm like, you could just ask, and it's not a problem. Oh, can I do it too? Actually, by the way, yeah, and I can send you an email with a follow-up of a summary of our conversation, and it'll be all organized for you, right? They'll bring in a sheet from ChatGPT and say, well, look, this is what I heard. Or they'll also talk to other attorneys, not tell you they did. And then when you give your opinion, they'll say, well, another attorney told me this, and look you in the eyes like you're a liar. And no, that's his style. I'm a little more aggressive. So that's what you get. I mean, sometimes. And I'm a little aggressive in consults, but once you get through that part, everything else goes great.
Absolutely. And you know what? I often find when people say the attorney told me this or another attorney told me that most of the time they're reciting what they recall.
Yeah.
But it's not accurate. It's something that
It could
was
be the
taken
same thing
out of
you said. And when
context.
you decipher, you're like, well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's interesting when that happens.
But yeah, I agree as far as, litigants are people, judges are people, attorneys are people. And, when it comes to like picking the right attorney as a client, I always say it's like choosing which horse you're gonna take like on a 300-mile ride, right? It's not a sprint, right? It's
I
a
will say,
marathon.
you should be that person who asks, can I record? You should be that person that says, the other lawyer has said this. You should be that person. The reason I say that is you kind of, you perk up on the other side. You want to show your intellectual, skills when somebody does that. So as much as I'm not really complaining about, I'm really commenting on it and I will also, I'll tell you the truth. If you act like that and you're more demanding of your attorney, you will get more out of them. And I think that's fairly said in any situation. So I would say, looking for attorneys, go in there and ask for everything you want, right? And hold your attorney accountable.
Right. Immigration is people are putting their life
From the immigration perspective.
in your hand. Family law, even people are putting their family right in your hand. And so it's important to work with an attorney that you trust, that you're going to rely on their advice, and attorneys that you believe are going to advocate on your best interests. Going through those processes are stressful enough, going through these situations. And the last thing that you want to worry about is whether or not your attorney is doing a good job in representing you. So you need to be confident in knowing that the person that you hired to help you out in this time that you need assistance, when time you need an advocate, is going to
Always see
really
two.
be litigating on your behalf.
Always see two attorneys before you hire one.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's definitely what I say. And, as far as Devin and I, right, we've been through it, right? So we've had civil cases where each of us had to file claims in court. Yours was more contract, and mine had more to do with family and
Yeah,
trust of
I've
the
been on
state.
I've been on the other side. Yeah, I've had a wedding venue that it fell through with them, and they tried to hold all the money. And for me, it was really more about the principle of just keeping all the money. And I went through the process, and you should know you're not getting all your money back. The attorney's going to get some fees. It's going to be negotiated, and there's going to be a lower settlement than usually what everybody wants. And that's another. Maybe it's a misconception. You're not going to get all your money back. Expenses have to go here, here, and here, and then it's lowered because your people are opting not to go to trial, unless one side is clearly at fault. So I think it's important to be aware of that.
But you can spend a lot more time and a lot more money litigating than what you might think, at the outset. And, that happens to the best of us,
Correct.
That happened to me, and I was an attorney, right? I was a new attorney, but
And recently, I just bought a house, and for my first home purchase. This didn't become a civil case, but I went to see another house, and the the real estate lady, it was very expensive. We put that out there. Okay, the real estate lady said, "Okay, it's a brand new house. If you sign up with the builder and the builder's bank, you're going to get this great interest rate. If you don't qualify for that excellent interest rate, then you'll get your deposit back. You had to make a deposit. So it was a $10,000 deposit. If you don't do that, you'll get your deposit back." That's what she said. Fill out the paperwork. Never bought a house before, and I'm the attorney, and I'm just signing everything like, okay, sounds great, sounds good. I don't have to read this. No, I trust you because my agent, was there. So I trusted the lady, on behalf of the
Yeah.
builders. That's what you should do. So maybe not. So then I didn't get the special rate. I said, you know what, this just doesn't feel right, because she had me looking at other lenders, and I said, you know what, let me step back and spend some more time on this. I'm not in such a rush. Then she said, well, listen, you can't, the builder can sue you and get more money out of you. You need to accept this, and that. And I said, excuse me. And next thing you know, they kept it. They had my deposit. I had to hire an attorney, good friend of mine, write a letter to them explaining what the legal avenues that could be pursued are. And then I got the deposit back. But I only got $9,000 back because I had to give $1,000 to my friend, right? Wanted to, but so, that's the cost of doing business, with the law. There's a deduction taken out.
do you think that you get treated differently when the other side knows that you're an attorney?
Absolutely. That's why I never come off as an attorney to professionals. I never tell them unless I have to, and it's a part of their service to me, because I love to be aware. I love to put myself in somebody who's a regular person, has no professional experience. I love to put myself in their shoes. And with that whole home situation, it turns out it's a very common issue. And I actually kind of really want to do something about it. I don't know what, houses are selling like hotcakes, yet they're holding deposits, forcing people to stay in homes when they make a bad decision. A lot of people fall in those traps. So I like to have you try to set the trap for me. And then I know who you are as a person.
What I think is interesting, both of you, because both of you have had cases where you have been parties, right? Where you have been litigants.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had that experience. Hopefully, I will not have that experience. But
Knock on wood.
as attorneys, how do you two decide who to hire? I know that Devin, you indicated that you hired an attorney to help you with the last dispute regarding the home. But how do you all decide how you hire?
Asking colleagues, having access to somebody that can provide an opinion on who to call. That's the number one thing. And then you get a second opinion from another friend. Yep, 2 times.
I looked for someone who was specifically like experienced in civil litigation, but then I liked it. I liked knowing that my attorney was collaborative law trained, because for me, if it's going to be settled via mediation or because even if your case is not a collaborative law case, you can use the collaborative law tools and training in mediation. So that was important to me.
I like to move fast, so I want an attorney that will go at my speed, and not like I need you to work quickly, but I need you to understand what I want quickly and not be around other issues. And I would say I'm a good client because I will put in writing what I want, and I'll tell you, here's the steps that I think you should take. I'll defer to your steps, but as long as the end goal is there, I put all of my thoughts, and I'm open to any other avenue. But I think also putting things on paper is very important. Write out a checklist so you know exactly where you're at.
I had a different experience. I said to my attorney, I said, I'm a difficult woman, but listen, it's part of my charm.
Yeah, I mean, and
I
you
have
need
what
it.
I want and why I want it.
Goes back to style. Who do you got to find the person that is sort of on your wavelength.
But in both of our scenarios with our civil cases, it's like we had no choice. The only way to protect our rights and
Correct.
our financial interests was
Correct.
to file, because
Correct.
the other side was just whatever they want to do, and there was no mediating it before filing a claim.
And we all had attorneys we were happy with.
Yeah.
you
And
know.
I think that begs an interesting question, because both of you are attorneys. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
you have network of attorneys. It's interesting how someone and you did research to find the person that was best for you in terms of protecting your legal interests. So it's interesting how, especially with AI, how individuals who don't have a legal background, people that may or may not have a computer, right? How they go about finding
If
representation that will give them their day in court, as
if
you all had.
I had no access to the internet, and if I had no access to any sort of like database, here's what I would do. I would just go to the courthouse that my case would be at, go through security, walk in a courtroom, wait for the case to end. Hey, bailiff, sir bailiff, that's by the judge. I have this type of case. Can you recommend, who do you think is a really good attorney in this courtroom? You have a name for me. Take that name. If they give it to you. If they don't, they'll say, I can't tell you that, then go to another one. Go to every single bailiff in the courthouse until you find one. I did that yesterday for a speeding ticket. Yeah. I didn't go to the courthouse, but I didn't call any attorneys. I called a bailiff I used to work with. I said, hey man, I know you work down there now. What's a good attorney out there? He gave me a name.
Yeah. That's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't think about that, right? The beauty about our court system is that the courtrooms are open. So
Yeah.
if you are wanting to find an attorney and you are looking at someone, if you find that they have a trial, you can go sit and watch them try a case and see if that is the type of representation that you want. That's
If you have the time. If you have the time.
Detric, what would you say is important for most Americans to know about the law and court systems in the U.S. specifically? So I'll preface that with saying, some people think that, well, if I win my case, then my attorney's fees are automatically going to be paid for. But that's the British rule, not the American rule, right? The American rule is everybody pays their own attorney's fees. But beyond that, what do you think is important that many Americans may not know off the bat?
So I think that it's important to know that winning in a legal sense is somewhat subjective, right? It depends on what you define as a win.
Mm-hmm.
Because most of the times, neither party walks out, even the prevailing party, walks out not really feeling like a true winner. They don't feel like they got everything that they wanted. And I think oftentimes people believe that once I get this judgment, right, once someone owes me this amount of money, that I can go to the bank and I can cash this court document and I'm going to be rolling in the dough. But the collection process is sometimes just as cumbersome as as getting the actual judgment. And that's if and only if the other side does not appeal. So sometimes litigation goes on for years before you receive a dime. And so I think sort of one of the common misconceptions is that it's going to be fast justice. It's going to be a speedy trial. And once this is done, I am done. But it's not always the case.
That old saying, justice delayed is justice denied. But what our listeners should be very aware of is that, and we know because we get the emails, they teach entire continuing legal education classes on how to make your client, quote unquote, judgment proof. So it's like, oh yeah, you can get a judgment against my client, but you're not going to get the money.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely.
Wow.
That is true. Because a lot of things are dischargeable in bankruptcy.
Huh.
But
even that.
But not attorney's fees when custody matters.
That is correct. That's correct. There's certain things that are. But if the person doesn't have money, right, you cannot get blood from a turnip. So
that's another.
Exactly.
That's another.
There are a lot of people that have judgments.
Another big point.
And you have to renew them every 12 years?
Absolutely, you do.
If you win or if somebody harms you, what do you get? Right. That's another misconception. Big one. What do I get? You think you're going to get a lot of money? Okay, I was unlawfully detained for a weekend. You're not going to get $1 million. You get, if anything, $2. I mean, so a lot of people don't realize, or they refuse to pay you, just like you all were talking about. So it's a great point.
Well, in the context of business, you have to look at the time value of money and the law of diminishing returns, right? How much energy and time and money are you going to dump into litigating when maybe you're a very profitable business and your time is better spent doing what you're doing best and writing that off and writing off whatever portion you can on your taxes, whatever it is.
Is that what it's called? Restitution or the judgment? Like I took a class and it was on judgments. And remedies, the remedy. What's the remedy?
Yeah, restitution is the criminal defense.
Correct. A remedy.
And that's interesting though, because with sentencing, I had this question, when you were working in the public defender's office, as far as You don't see the fine imposed a lot, right? It's always like how long in prison you're going to get and how much restitution.
Yeah,
You don't
there's
usually see the fines,
the
even though in the law it's there.
It's interesting. Yeah, there could, assault is a fine of up to $10,000, and I guess one could. I get this a couple of times. Can I just pay the 10 grand? I've never seen a 10,000. If I was on the bench, I might be prone to give a $10,000 judgment to somebody to find out what, because that is another option. You're right. They're normally waived, or it's only $200-$300 or $500.
But it's a good thing because you're spending so much money on your attorney.
That is true. That is true. But if you wanted to pay for it instead of go to jail for it, maybe, maybe it's not a bad option depending on the situation.
Well, I'm sure you wouldn't be either or. It would be like a mix. But I'm just saying.
I don't know.
We don't
Maybe
really
that's
see
why I'm not a judge, I guess. I think he deserved it. He said something bad about you. $7,000 for that punch in the face.
Did you learn your lesson, sir?
But I think the other side of that is, right, you don't want people that have the ability to pay to just do that. You don't want someone to
And that's
go
why
and
it's
assault
yeah.
someone and say, here you go, here's $10,000,
Mhm.
right?
Well, but those cases don't even reach a courtroom because that agreement's made,
Right.
Yeah.
under the table or off.
Another
the
reason
record.
too. Yeah, you're right. You wouldn't be in a court with, getting 7,000.
And what about, Detric, like a motion for summary judgment? I've heard from civil litigators that motions for summary judgment, even if like the law is clearly on your side, a lot of times judges in Maryland are not so inclined to grant them. Is that your experience, or have you had a different experience with that?
That has been consistent with my experience.
Okay.
And I think it's because the standard is so high, right? And it
Okay.
should be. Because when you think about that standard, when you think about weighing all facts and inferences in favor of the non-moving party, in favor of the party that did not request summary judgment, that's a very high hurdle to climb. And it's better for people to really get their day in court, because maybe you're going through the discovery process. Maybe there's some information that you haven't found that is going to be the thing to help you litigate your case. So instead of granting a motion for summary judgment and possibly having someone refile when they get more evidence, sometimes it's better to let the trial continue to go and to find and to rule on the merits of the trial based on what people are saying. I do know in certain cases where there's not a shred of evidence,
Yeah.
it's granted, but it's not granted. It's supposed to be one of those things that careful and you make absolute certain that there is no way that this person could prevail on the merits.
And let's just do a quick explain what summary judgment is. What does that mean?
Motion for
instead of
summary
regular
judgment. So
person,
there's
right?
no material fact in dispute, right? And the law favors one party, so the moving party is entitled to judgment in their favor. Which obviously, if you file that and the facts are on your side and the law is on your side, from your perspective as the moving party, right? That's more cost effective and time efficient to file that and to win it. And so when you feel like you're in that position and then you lose, then it's frustrating because then now you have to go to trial on something that you're like, this should have been resolved at summary judgment. That's my perspective,
Absolutely. So I think of summary judgment as exactly as you said, Meg. I think of summary judgment as a tool to help our court system from being so overcrowded with frivolous litigation that has absolutely no merit, right? And so what you're asking the court to do, you're asking the court, without hearing any evidence, without receiving any testimony, to make a decision that I win just based on the pleadings. And it's one of those things that I think has to be done judiciously, because otherwise you have situations where people that really have merit, there's merit to their argument, you'll have lawsuits being dismissed that should actually be heard.
If I brought a case and it was dismissed and my case was dismissed on summary judgment locally, I would take it as a sign, as Devin, you need to do a better job at bringing cases before this judge. I think it's more a statement from the judge that, listen, I give you all the time, I'm patient, but I don't want this anymore. You need to bring a case correctly. That's what I would say. If it were brought in Frederick or in Maryland, not federal, but
Maybe
like statewide.
So you're saying that there's not a prima facie case in the first
Like, I think a
place.
judge, even if there isn't, a judge will want to give you the time of day just out of respect to the attorney and the client. But if it happens and they do dismiss it, I think that, the judge thinks that your case is almost disrespectful to the court. That's kind of my opinion.
Not quite frivolous, but
Yeah,
not
don't do
meritorious.
this to me again.
Right. But that's kind of scary. I mean, and I think that's a great point, right? You don't want people so afraid of filing their lawsuit
Yeah.
that they don't do anything, or they wait
Mhm.
until things have gotten so bad that the court doesn't really have time, or doesn't have the bandwidth to hear their litigation. So
Again, which is why it's rare,
interesting.
right? It's rare.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Devin. Thank you, Detric. This has been the Common Misconceptions About the Legal System episode here on People Acting Like Lawyers and Mostly Malarkey. We thank you humbly for joining us, and we'll be bringing you more content very soon. That's a wrap.